at today is a vintage Rolando Banjo Ukulele, and we're going to be putting a new head on it. And I'm doing a video on this because it just operates a little bit differently than a lot of the older banjo ukes. The head goes on in a slightly different way, but let's take a look at it. So I'm going to start, I soaked this in water so it's kind of malleable. This little ring here is going to push through right on the inside circumference of this hoop, and it's going to lock in to the little lip that's about, it's about a ½ inch down. It's going to lock in and hold the head like that. You want to make sure that it's not, the hoop itself where the split is not overlapping or anything like that. So it might take a little bit of positioning of the head. Also, you don't want too many like little wrinkly spots where the head itself is overlapping back across itself, because then you end up with a thick spot and it's harder to, you know, push this counter ring back through to provide tension. And I'll sometimes put a little slack in it just to compensate so it has a little bit of give when it pulls through. See if we can get that right. And that's a pretty good starting point. Sometimes you got to do it a couple times to really get it right, but we'll see how this goes. So now I'm going to flip it over, and you want this kind of flat side with the indentation facing the back of the instrument, because these little screws are going to ride in that indentation and provide the force to push this back through, providing the tension on the head. So let's take a look at that. And it should be snug, but it should fit through fairly easily. You don't want to, sometimes these hoops will shrink because they're wood, and I mean this thing's almost probably 90 years old. The wood will shrink, and sometimes the metal doesn't shrink and it's a really tight fit. Be careful of that, because you can actually blow the rim apart. You know, if you build in too much tension in that way. So sometimes it takes a little adjustment to the rim or the hoop, or, you know, sometimes you got to work with it a little bit. But that should sit in like that, and that's going to push through, ultimately providing you with the tension on the head as it pushes this way. These little babies are going to notch into the sidewall, and you want the screw on the bottom. So as you screw down, it's pushing the hoop forward. And a lot of them will have 6 screws. This one has 4. Seems like 2 of them are on vacation somewhere. You know, it'll work fine with 4. And first I'm just going to get them sort of positioned in the sidewall. So they're ready to put some tension on it. There we go, there's 2 of them. You just want to space them evenly. I mean, obviously it's going to space differently with 6 as opposed to 4. Just spread them out in a responsible manner. There we go, 3rd one in. This will be the last one. There we go. Now I'm going to grab some needle nose pliers and a flathead screwdriver, right? So if you can see where we're at now, hopefully none of these are going to fall out. These are spread out evenly, kind of, and they're sitting, the tip of the screw is sitting in that little indentation around the ring. Now we'll start putting a little tension on it and see. And you want to be careful here at this point, because you don't want to, you know, back when we were talking about how the rim can shrink, this is the time to look for that. If you start hearing it creaking or crackling, it's telling you something. It's telling you that it's about to split. So listen to it. But this one should be good. I had to make a couple of adjustments to it, which hopefully are gonna make this easy to do. So I'm just holding that little screw or the little nut with the pliers and turning the screw, kind of pushing the inside ring out, tensioning the head. And we'll take a look at this at a few stages in this process. First, we're just going to get a little comfortable tension on it. Move through a couple cycles of this. And then we can look at the other side. Let's take a look at it. So now you can see here the head's starting to it's starting to push through and become flush with the top of this ring, which is what you want. And it's starting to get a little bit of tension to it. As it dries out, it'll tighten up even more. So this is looking pretty good. Let's keep going with a little more tension. And it's not, I don't feel like a whole lot of resistance. Again, you want to really be sensitive to the fit of this metal ring, this metal hoop through the wooden rim. If it's really tight, back off. You need to either, you know, sand out a little bit of the rim itself, or adjust the hoop. Sometimes I've cut them in half and then welded them back together a little bit smaller. I've seen some that have been, the weld has broken in the past and then they've been welded back together with like a little bit of a gap. So, you know, see all kinds of stuff with these older ones. So look at that, it's starting to come up to where it needs to be. Starting to get nice and tight. Watch out for little wrinkles, but this looks pretty good. We're getting there. Go a little more on this side. And I try to bring it up pretty evenly so you don't get a whole ton of tension on one side. I'm going to get a smaller screwdriver. There we go. Now you want to bring it up evenly so it's not lopsided in there, which it needs to come up a little on this side. Because if it gets crooked in there, it can sort of wedge itself in and, you know, gotta work out the problems. Feeling good, starting to get tense. Oh yeah. Move this one along. And the last thing we're going to do before letting it dry is cut the remainder of the excess skin out. And sometimes I'll do that before it gets all the way, before it raises all the way up to here, because then you can cut it below the point where you're going to see it. And you want to watch because the rim's right behind it. Not the sharpest in the world. Let me get a new blade. Okay. Okay, so we're going to now trim a little bit around the rim. And I'm just cutting this, you know, as far below the rim. You don't want to see the little, inevitably you're going to make a little bit of a score line in the hoop. So that's why I'm doing it before I get the tension all the way up and the whole thing comes through. It's just for visual, make it visually appealing. I'm just lightly scoring that. See how it's kind of separating? Want to be really careful to not cut the good part. And I'm telling you that because I've done it. Yes. The voice of experience. Don't cut the part that's not supposed to be cut. So we're trucking along. It's looking good. No need to rush this part. See, just following it around. And it's still nice and malleable. It's not soaking wet, but just want to go slowly. Be careful. If you wear glasses, put them on so you can see. Coming along nicely. And by cutting it like this before it's up to full tension, we're going to get a nice looking head. You're not going to see the little remainder piece popping out of the edge. You're not going to see any little minor score lines along the inside of the rim. People are going to say, wow, that looks good. You must be an expert. Getting a little thicker here, so I'm going to go slower. See? Looks nice and clean. It's almost up to the tension where it needs to be. And again, it's going to tense up too as the skin dries. You want it to dry for at least, I leave them for 24 hours at least, before really putting the final tension on it. You want to get it maybe, I try to get them about 90% to where the final tension is, and then I'll do the last 10% after it's dried out. But some people bring them all the way up, but it's just a preference thing.